She barely looks up from her tablet when the flight attendant's voice cuts through the cabin like a blade. "You can't sit here. These seats are for paying passengers." Gasps ripple through first class. Delia Washington feels every eye on her, the sting of humiliation burning hotter than the Florida sun outside the window. Her husband Trevor shifts beside her, calm but coiled, a man used to turbulence, not this kind. The attendant's smirk widens as she waves over security. Phones start recording. And as the couple quietly stand, no one, not even a captain, realizes they've just targeted 2 federal inspectors sent to investigate this very airline. But first, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment below from which city you are watching this video. Before the flight, Delia Washington's mornings followed a rhythm of quiet precision. Coffee at dawn, morning jog along the Potomac, a stack of safety compliance reports waiting in her Federal Aviation Administration office before the city was even awake. To her, rules weren't about bureaucracy, they were about fairness. The sky didn't care about race, wealth, or gender. It demanded precision, accountability, and respect. If only people on the ground operated the same way. Her husband, Trevor, mirrored her discipline in his own world, a former commercial pilot turned aviation consultant. Calm, composed, always observant. Together, they'd built careers defined by integrity, not influence. But in recent months, both had noticed the same troubling pattern buried deep within their case files, an increase in discrimination complaints against a specific airline. First-class passengers questioned about their legitimacy. Boarding passes scrutinized more harshly if they belonged to someone who didn't look the part. When the FAA requested volunteers for an undercover compliance review, Delia didn't hesitate. She'd spent years reading other people's stories of humiliation at 30,000 feet. It was time to see the truth for herself. The night before the flight, she packed her small black carry-on with methodical care, business documents, a tablet, a leather-bound notepad. Her husband reviewed the flight manifest one last time, noting familiar crew names that matched previous complaints. Neither of them could have predicted what was waiting behind that boarding gate, the kind of arrogance and ignorance that could destroy a career in minutes. Tomorrow, they wouldn't just be passengers. They'd be witnesses. The morning of the flight began like any other business trip, routine, efficient, unremarkable. Yet beneath the calm surface, Delia felt the electric hum of anticipation. This wasn't just another assignment. It was a test of truth, of bias, of how far people's assumptions could go when uniforms and authority were involved. At the departure gate, everything looked ordinary. Families juggling luggage, business travelers clutching coffee, and the quiet hum of boarding announcements. But from the moment the first-class passengers began lining up, Delia noticed the shift. The lead flight attendant, a tall woman with sharp posture and sharper eyes, was greeting each passenger with mechanical warmth. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Carter." "Good morning, Mrs. Langley." Her tone softened for some, brightened for others. Then her gaze landed on Delia and Trevor. The warmth vanished. The attendant's eyes narrowed just slightly, enough for Trevor to catch it. The subtle tightening of the jaw, the change in her voice. "First class?" she asked, her tone laced with disbelief. She took the boarding passes, holding them a second too long, scanning each one as if expecting an error to appear. Other passengers began to glance over. Delia felt her pulse quicken, but her expression remained calm, professional. Years of public service had taught her the value of composure. "Is there a problem?" she asked softly. The attendant's smile didn't reach her eyes. "We just have to make sure these seats were properly assigned." Behind them, the boarding line stalled. A murmur spread. Someone sighed impatiently. The kind of collective tension that builds when people sense something is off, but no one wants to be the first to name it. Finally, the attendant waved them through, muttering, "Enjoy your flight." But the damage was done. The stares followed them down the aisle, silent accusations, curious whispers, quiet judgment. Trevor placed their bags in the overhead bin, his movement steady, but his jaw tight. When they settled into their seats, Delia could feel the tension radiating from the crew. 2 attendants stood near the galley, glancing toward them, whispering behind clipped smiles. Trevor opened a magazine, pretending to read. Delia made notes on her tablet, documenting every detail. Then came the second wave of hostility. "Excuse me," the same attendant said, reappearing moments later. "I'll need to see your tickets again. We've had some mix-ups lately." Trevor handed them over without a word. The attendant examined them once more, sighing dramatically. "These were purchased using a corporate account, correct?" "Yes," Delia replied evenly. through federal channels. The woman's eyebrows lifted. Federal, she repeated, as if the word didn't belong to them. Interesting. Her tone made it clear. Interesting didn't mean believable. As she walked away, another passenger leaned slightly toward Trevor. Unbelievable, he whispered under his breath. Can't even sit in peace without being questioned. Trevor gave a polite nod, but said nothing. Silence, he knew, could be louder than confrontation. Minutes later, a male attendant arrived, flanked by a uniformed gate agent. Their expressions were firm, rehearsed, the look of people ready to enforce authority, not seek understanding. Sir, ma'am, the agent began, there seems to be an issue with your ticket verification. We'll need you to step off the aircraft while we confirm the details. A ripple moved through the cabin. Heads turned. Cameras tilted discreetly. The air thickened with judgment and discomfort. Dahlia rose slowly, her eyes calm but heavy. Of course, she said quietly. As they gathered their things, Trevor glanced toward the cockpit. Through the narrow gap in the door, he caught a glimpse of the captain watching the scene unfold and looking away. Neither of them resisted. They walked down the aisle under the weight of 100 silent witnesses, some pitying, others indifferent. The humiliation was public, sharp, and deliberate. But what no one realized was that the moment they stepped off that plane, the real turbulence was only beginning. The terminal was silent except for the low hum of the air conditioning and the quiet shuffle of passengers pretending not to stare. Security officers stood nearby, waiting for direction, their expressions caught somewhere between confusion and discomfort. The gate agent's tone was clipped, professional, and painfully dismissive. Your tickets couldn't be verified through the system, she said, eyes fixed on her screen. We'll need to reassign those seats until this is sorted. Dahlia's heart pounded, but her voice remained steady. You've scanned them twice already. The booking is confirmed under the Federal Aviation Administration's travel account. The words hung heavy in the air, but the attendant didn't react, or perhaps didn't register what she was hearing. Instead, she waved for another supervisor, who arrived wearing the same practiced smile that hid corporate fear behind customer service. By now, phones were out again. Passengers who'd watched them walk off the aircraft were recording from a distance, whispering guesses, piecing together their own versions of the story. A black couple. First class. Questioned. Removed. It fit a pattern people had seen too many times before. Then came the final insult. The flight attendant who'd started it all appeared at the gate, holding her tablet like a badge of power. We can't allow them back on until payment is confirmed, she announced, voice raised enough for everyone to hear. It's policy. Trevor felt his stomach twist. Dahlia slowly turned to face her, her voice sharp now, the calm precision gone. Policy, she said quietly. Or prejudice. The air snapped. Even the gate agent flinched. For a brief moment, no one moved. Then, from across the terminal, a deep, commanding voice broke through. That won't be necessary. Every head turned. A man in a dark navy suit stepped forward, his badge glinting under the fluorescent light. I'm Special Agent Ramirez, FAA Enforcement Division. These passengers are conducting an official compliance review. The color drained from the attendant's face. Her tablet trembled in her hand. The murmurs grew louder. Phones caught every second. And as Dahlia met her gaze one last time, she didn't need to say a word. The truth had just boarded the flight. The fallout was immediate. Within hours, the video spread across social media, a shaky, 3-minute clip showing a black couple being escorted off a plane for verification. By morning, the headlines had changed. FAA inspectors removed from flight after alleged racial profiling. The airline scrambled to control the damage, issuing apologies that sounded rehearsed and hollow. Internal memos were leaked, meetings were called, and overnight, the same attendants who had dismissed Dahlia and Trevor became symbols of a much deeper problem. But for the Washingtons, it wasn't about public humiliation or even vindication. It was about accountability. In her quiet office days later, Dahlia reviewed the official FAA report, documented proof of systemic bias in crew conduct training. Her pen didn't shake as she signed the final line. The incident wasn't just evidence, it was a mirror reflecting an industry still blind to its own prejudice. Trevor watched her from across the room, pride and sadness mingling in his eyes. They had done their jobs, but at a cost few would understand. And yet, as painful as the experience had been, it sparked something larger. Mandatory sensitivity retraining was launched across multiple carriers. Several senior crew members were suspended pending review. For the first time in years, there was movement, not because of a press release, but because two people refused to accept humiliation as normal. Still, the moment haunted Dalia. Not because of what was said, but because of the silence that followed, the passengers who looked away, the ones who whispered but didn't speak. That silence was louder than any insult. So as she closed the report and looked out the window of her office, she wondered, how many more flights, how many more lives would it take before respect wasn't something to be verified? Because dignity, unlike a boarding pass, should never need approval.